I knew that I wanted to be able to rally around a dying person, gather around a dying person, and have community tend to different aspects of the dying journey in honor of this life.
In so many spiritual lineages, they say the moment of death is catapults you into your next jati or your next existence, and to have peace and to have peace at that moment does that.
If you're somebody who is drawn to God, like if that's something that you are focused on in your life, that end of life space is so rich.
What are you really afraid of when you think about leaving this body? We have a lot of ideas of where we're going, but we really don't know intellectually where we're going.
So Aditi, when we moved to Asheville, I think everybody that I talked to, it felt like, was like, oh, you've got to meet Aditi. Have you met Aditi? You have to meet Aditi. From all different scenarios of life, I felt like everybody was saying that we had to connect. We were just talking how it took.
Yeah, forever, too long.
I was able to connect with you.
Yes.
But our group connection took a little bit longer.
You're just so loved, and you're just so respected, and by this Asheville community for the work that you do. And so you're an Asheville hero. I'm not sure if you know that or not, but like a lot of people look at you with like love and admiration. So we're super grateful that you're here today.
Thank you.
So Aditi runs the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, CCL. Did I get that?
You got it.
The 2 C's in the right order?
Yes,
Okay. Which is like a spiritual hospice center, essentially, which is an incredibly beautiful place. I had been hearing about it and you'd shared the work, but I had never been out there until our dear friend David Newman's body was, I love that you took his body in your car out there after he passed away. I just love that, like Weekend at Bernie's visual. I'm sure it was much more elegantly carried than Weekend at Bernie's, but there was just something that it was like in your car. It felt so, I don't know, I loved that detail of it, but going out to the land, it's in this, I mean, the land is just incredibly, I don't know, it's perfect. It's just this like beautiful picturesque spot in the mountains, and there's such a juicy atmosphere and peaceful atmosphere. And I couldn't imagine a much better place to move into the next realm than that. You've really created just a very idyllic environment. And I feel like so many people I know in town volunteer with you and sing in the choir at your place, and like it's just, you have such a rich community centered around helping people pass well. I have so much admiration for what you do. So we're excited to just learn more about it and share and dive into it a little bit.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you. Yeah, that land is definitely a sacred space, sacred place. And I think I heard you all speak about Soham that way. Like, what does the land want? And what is the land guiding us to be and to do? And I feel that very much that way on that sacred portal that's in the Swannanoa Valley. So,
how did it come to be? Like, how does one create such a place?
Well, I had been in the modern approach to death and dying, the way of dying, for probably 25 plus years as a hospice volunteer when I was 17, through medical training, and then specialized in hospice palliative care, and then worked for 10 years in an inpatient, 26-bed inpatient facility. So I had been steeped in the modern way of dying for a long time.
In Asheville?
In Asheville. And along the way, very early in that course, after I graduated from my medical training, I started seeing patterns and noticing things that didn't feel quite sit right in my being. And some of those things included people coming to their deathbed terrified, unprepared, families in denial that this experience was happening to their loved one, so much grief and sadness that overwhelmed the family unit or the extended family unit to the point where people couldn't be fully present with their loved one. And that was just some of the parts of what I noticed and aspects of what I noticed. And then I started realizing that the healthcare system wasn't really designed to tend to those aspects of the dying process upstream of an illness or upstream of the crisis, nor was there incentive to do so. And so that little, I kind of describe it as a whisper in my ear and a knowing in my heart that there was something for me to do in that. And being, from India and going back to India and seeing death in plain sight and death very much integrated into life, I knew that this was sort of a modern phenomenon, a modern dis-ease, a discomfort with death. And so fast forward, I met this young man, Ethan Sisser, who was 36 years old, dying of a glioblastoma. And I had the honor of being his doctor initially, and then his death doula, for reasons that are captured in a documentary called The Last Ecstatic Days. But that journey with Ethan, where we just kind of, still during the pandemic, so people were dying isolated, lonely deaths, and that journey with him, surrounded by community, where we rallied community to tend to a dying man, to honor his last wish of filming his dying journey, was so profound for me and this community, this Asheville tribe. And I just had a deep knowing that it was time to leave my career as I knew it and step into the unknown, which, being at the bedside of so many people and working in the death realm, comfort with the unknown is part of it, right? We don't know. We have a lot of ideas of where we're going, but we really don't know intellectually where we're going. And so, and also how death will evolve varies per person. There's similarities in the dying process, but it's so unique to each individual. So that comfort with the unknown guided me to the Center for Conscious Living and Dying as you've seen it. But it was very much a guided journey, and I just followed the breadcrumbs, if you will, and met the people that were people just kept showing up to serve and support along the way. And it was just, very much a guided experience.
So Ethan from the documentary was before CCLD, as we know it was actually. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that. I
had founded the Center for Conscious Living and Dying as an LLC in 2018 with the idea of having sort of a learning platform to educate people around death and dying and practices around death and dying and what to expect in the process and how to show up for loved ones. And I had become a death doula in 2017. But as it is now, it was founded in 2021. So pretty recent. And you all moved here, I think, around
2022?
Yeah, so it was pretty, we were kind of in, I remember having conversations with Sneha and Vrinda around properties and land, and it was very much emerging then, continues to be emergent as well. But
so sister properties. Yeah.
When did you end up on the land?
2022, we closed.
Okay.
In September, I believe, August. Our grand opening was May 24, and then Helene hit, and so it's pretty fresh.
I didn't realize it was so new.
Yeah.
Because it feels like there's a lot going on for something that's so new.
Yeah, it is.
So I guess the thing that seems to be the obvious question, I love my dad. Obviously my parents are still with me, so they're alive, and they've studied a lot of philosophy, and they've been part of like spiritual lineages for a long time. But I always, I love him, so I just don't want him to have fear at the moment of death. Like that's something that kind of is in my heart, And but how can you, what kind of, how do you look at it, or what kind of processes do you go through so that you can turn the volume down on fear?
So the fear of death in our modern world, and I say that because how we approach death now in the last 150 years is pretty unique as compared to how we probably approached it for much of human history, so 350,000 plus years. Because of modern advancements in healthcare, medicine, we're living longer. We have moved away from the village life in the modern world. And so fear in many ways has come from lack of exposure to death, lack of understanding of how to be with someone who's dying, lack of practices to help us prepare for this inevitable journey. So I think looking at what people are really afraid of is part of the exploration. Like, what are you really afraid of when you think about leaving this body? Is it fear of your life being meaningless and not having value, or have you not lived the life you want to live? Is it fear of the unknown? Is it pain of separation, which for many it is? So what is the fear? Is it fear of pain and suffering? Which a lot of people who have fear of death is like they feel terrified of the lack of control, the physical discomfort that might come, the being a burden, sense of being a burden on loved ones. So really looking at you have to talk about death in order to explore your fear around death. And so few of us even engage in the conversation. It's considered morbid and gloomy. And I have found the exact opposite, that my being in relationship with death and in relationship to the impermanence of this life has really enhanced my life. So I think I would start with just asking, Mom and Dad, are you afraid of death? You know? I don't know if that's happened, but it's also—
Oh, it's happened.
Yeah.
But the problem is, because they've like studied so much like philosophy, they've been around light so much that, I don't know, maybe I could be wrong too. I'm not saying I've got the right paradigm, but they're like, oh no, we're not scared of death. But I'm like, no, they got to, you know, are they really not scared of death, or are they just saying that they're not scared of death? You know, and so I just wonder, because I think there's like layers of it, and I think you said a lot of beautiful things of, you know, well, what component of it is there. I don't know exactly what the component for them would be, but I guess I just and you know, in so many spiritual lineages, they say the moment of death is catapults you into your next jati or your next existence, and to have peace and to have peace at that moment does that, you know. And so I guess as a son, I want that, not just for them, for any human being, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful intention. And in order for the container or the setting to be conducive to that level of peace and presence, there is some preparation that supports that experience. I think of my father who died last year. He took his final breath at the center after being in the ICU for about 2 weeks. And I can get into that. But in order for him to have a death where he was surrounded by loved ones, comfortable, chanted to, I was singing the Maha mantra to him. And in order to have all that unfold the way it did, he had to be very clear about his wishes, what he would want and not want. And the setting had to be available for him to where his physical needs could be tended to, our spiritual and emotional needs could be tended to in community, which was so profound. So there is some preparation upstream of that actual moment that can happen, which is part of it's practical, you know. Who do you want around you? What scents, what smells? Do you want to be in a hospital, nursing home? Most people don't, but they end up there. Do you want all of us around you? Do you want privacy? Sometimes you don't know until you're in that situation. So the practical aspects are your advanced directives and all the practical things medically taken care of so we can honor your wishes. Have you had conversations around, would you want to be ventilated or not? Those sorts of things. What songs would you like to hear? You know, so then the emotional, spiritual aspects. So you can prepare upstream of the actual moment. So that's, yeah.
And having somebody who's well-versed in the right questions to ask, which those questions are never asked in a hospital.
Right.
In the hospital, it's how long can we possibly keep this person alive until the point where we kill them with morphine. Essentially is very often how that ends up happening. So to be in a place with the intention of allowing somebody to pass beautifully and considering it a sacred part of life and not a failure of a sort is, you know, like radical and obvious simultaneously. I was telling these guys earlier, I volunteered hospice when I was probably like 26 or 27 years old. My uncle had just passed away, and seeing the hospice experience through that really inspired me. So I started volunteering hospice, and I was living in New York City at the time, and the reality of how a lot of people pass away there was really just kind of heartbreaking. There was one lady I went to see who had no family around. She was living in the city by herself. She was in her 80s, and I was assigned / ended up, you know, being somebody to come and sit with her for a little while. And I walked into this nursing home kind of thing in the Bronx that was 8 or 9 invalid elderly people sitting in front of Judge Judy blaring on the TVs. They were all pretty much just like drooling and barely conscious. And I came and I sat next to this lady, and I said, I'm here to be with you for a while. And she just took my hand, because it felt like she hadn't had any touch in a long time. And she just like hugged and clung to my arm. And I sat with her. She couldn't really speak, but just having physical contact, it was like she was drowning from the lack of it. Like she was so thirsty for it. It was really heartbreaking to think how many people die like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the deaths in nursing homes can be so lonely and isolated, and to have that level of presence and love for her, what a gift.
I mean, I was there for like an hour out of,
even that moment, even that moment. Yeah, it's true. And that's part of this idea of revillaging and sort of what can death and dying look like in our communities so that people aren't dying alone, so they are held in community. We've had a few people leave nursing homes and come to be with us, which is such a blessing. I understand the need for nursing home level care, but if we can bring people to a home setting for their dying days, like what a gift, for us as well as potentially for them.
How many people can you?
Up to 3 at a time. So 3 or less. It's meant to be intimate, and it's, it's a nonprofit, and care is free to those who are dying at the center. So It's really beautiful.
I love the fact you keep using the word village, because we use it all the time. It's like one of the reasons that we exist is to bring this concept of villageness, back into, because, a lot of times we don't even know our neighbors, or you live in neighborhoods, you don't know people that are 4 people down. And so many of our problems are because we're not gathering like in the evenings, and we're not, sharing family responsibilities with the people around us. And we deeply believe that, that's a major reason people feel like alienated or feel sad or like anxiety, depression, because the whole concept of alone is magnified when you're not in that village setting, and one of the aspirations for Soham is for people to heal in a village setting and not in a hospital. Like I feel like I had to get checked into an institution, because from an Ayurveda perspective, if you're going through your own healing journey and you see 2 old people playing checkers and you can hear kids laughing in the background, and you have cows mooing, like it actually helps you heal, because like what if there was some thing that I needed to say to my father but I never got a chance to. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, just seeing the other person's face or seeing a generation of humanity kind of helps you heal. It helps you kind of process like within yourself, And so I do think that a village concept is healing, and I love the fact you keep articulating that word into what you're saying.
Yeah. 2 things come up for me as I'm hearing you. One is that once my father came to the center, the sanctuary, we call it, and there was a man lying in honor. So he had died, and we're doing a home funeral for him, so tending to his body, which is a right anyone has access to. Anyone's allowed to do that. And there was somebody dying in the suites downstairs. There were children running around. He came with his friends to do a tour, and he just looked around and he said, this is the way it ought to be. So I'd add death into that conversation about the village, or that picture of a village, that there's a dying person, a birthing person, that all of this is, the full spectrum of life is experienced, so.
Yeah, things get so siloed in our world, and when you kind of bring it all onto the same platter in a way.
Exactly.
And you have such a community around what you do.
That's what that was the second thing, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so I knew that when I started this journey that I wanted to be able to rally around a dying person, gather around a dying person, and have community tend to different aspects of the dying journey in honor of this life, And I don't think I appreciated or realized how much that would magnetize community, and how much volunteers and people serving would be served themselves. And so that the epidemic of loneliness, it's a thing, it's real. And what we're finding is the community that is gathering around the dying person is experiencing a vitality and a kind of a level of connection that longed for, I think, by many of us. So it's a beautiful way of bringing community together in service and love, really.
And you're doing all kinds of things out there. You've got a choir. I feel like
it's all of life, right? There's a lot of, we've been partnering with Warren Wilson College, which is across the valley. So to have that generation present in service, they tend to the land, they're doing different practices, they're engaging in different ways with volunteers and hearing stories about serving in the suites. Suites are the actual rooms that people are dying in. And then we have programming. When we were first forming, the idea was anyone who has a gift that they want to bring to the community can use the space to bring their gifts. So we've had a wide range of offerings, spirited improv to kirtans, and now we're kind of evolving to where we're looking at everything again. But yes, we have a lot of offerings. It's been wonderful. Anything that's conscious living, which is broad, is invited. So, yeah.
It's interesting. For me, I tried psychedelics for the first time, 5 years ago. No, 3 years ago. It's been short.
2 or 3 years ago. What is
time? Time totally died. I don't know. Okay, so let's say 2 or 3 years ago. And that was the first time that I really felt a reality that seemed even more true than this physical reality outside of my body. And at that juncture, there's a lot of experiences that made me really realize that, no, I'm more than this body. And there's no death, and I felt like I experienced it as opposed to thought about it, and that really put me at peace. So, I've been talking to my dad. I've been like, Dad, I was like, you gotta try psychedelics, and he was like 80 or whatever, right? Old traditional conservative Indian guy, and then finally it took about a year where it was just, I'm not trying to convince him, I'm not trying to sell him on it. But I was like, Dad, I was like
a little bit.
You won't be scared to death. And Dad was like, I'm not scared of death. I was like, but you really won't be scared of death, So I don't know how, but he's also got like a tremor. And ibogaine, there's a lot of cutting research on how ibogaine can really help with, parts of the brain that, degenerate. And so, Parkinson's, the substantia nigra is degenerating. So there's a lot of cutting edge stuff about ibogaine treatment for that as well. And then in addition to the treatment for the tremor, you could also have an experience that way, So it's just like, I don't know if you have experience, but for me, that ended up being like the kind of the capstone saying, I'm free from this fear, and also my two takeaways of my first psychedelic experience was at least from what I understood it from my journey is like I know that there's a God, like I had a cup of coffee, we chatted, it was great. I was like, okay, that there's definitely a God. And second, that we don't die. And for me, that's been so empowering. That's like really helped me in every dimension and aspect of my life, And so I guess I don't know what your thoughts are on that, or what have you seen any like learnings or people being able to transition more peacefully in that if they've had an experience like that? I don't think it has to be psychedelics. I think you can have a bunch of different things to experience something like that. It doesn't have to be that, but I don't know what your take is on that or what you've seen.
Yeah, if you've spent your whole life meditating, connecting, being in nature, realizing that we are nature, not separate from it, being in community, practicing letting go, acknowledging all the little deaths along the way, and then you're really prepared for the ultimate transition, then maybe you don't need psychedelics. Right. But so few people have lived a life of practice. And so what we know is, with the research around psychedelics and end-of-life care, is that one journey with psilocybin in an end-of-life setting where people are paralyzed by their anxiety to the point where they can't even engage with their families, one psychedelic journey can transform their whole experience of dying and living until death, because it connects us to this mystical reality and helps us remember that there is no death. Yeah. And that's been a belief. You're right. There's a sense of if all the wisdom traditions are telling us this, and it's intellectually we understand that there is no death, then that's one thing. But when you have a somatic, visceral knowing, like that transforms all of your life as you're preparing for this part of life, which is death, right?
Yeah, you're gonna go out dancing, yes. You're gonna go out party style, yeah. And and I think that's a societal aspiration, so we go out and celebration. So just a little bit more further on that. How does that go down if someone kind of sees their, let's say they have a terminal diagnosis and they've kind of accepted the fact that, okay, I'm going to transition in the next month or so, or the case may be. Is it advisable at that time for that person? Like, how does that work? Like, do they
using
do
psychedelics?
Yeah, like because I'm not sure how that affects that.
Yeah, so the psychedelics that I was speaking to, the psilocybin that's being researched, is not legal in most places.
Right.
Ketamine's available.
Sure.
There's others that are out there. So access is limited for some people.
Right.
But in terms of when to introduce psychedelics, I think there's different opinions about that. Ideally, when people are not actively dying, prior to that, which could be days to weeks before they go. They may not need the medicine because death is really its own medicine.
Right.
There are all these physiologic changes happening. People express, like when they're really in that liminal space, they're having mystical experiences to where introducing that medicine may not be necessary.
Sure.
I know people that have used these medicines up until their last breath, administered by other people, by their choice. But so I don't think we really know, like,
Right.
the impact of that. You're saying something, and I had another thought, but it disappeared. So
I'm curious if no,
came
did you get it back? Did it come back? No, take
back.
it. Write it.
You were asking, have I experienced the use of psychedelics supporting personally someone who's transitioning? I supported a woman who was in her 50s with metastatic lung cancer, and she had 2 young sons. And the thing that she was holding on to most was living long enough to just be with her sons as long as she could, to the point where she was suffering. Chemo was causing blistering of her skin and just shedding. It was just very intense. And her use of psychedelics helped her release that attachment and gave her a sense of peace knowing that her children were going to be okay. And so that was very powerful to witness, the impact of those journeys on her ultimate release.
Mm-hmm. That is powerful.
Yeah, it was.
Jeremy, what are you saying?
I'm curious. There's a lot of people will share stories of people in that space where they've just left their body, but they're still close by, and they kind of cross through worlds. And I'm wondering if you've seen any people in that experience
who come back and are kind of in between and
yeah,
sharing.
they like give a sign, like flicker some lights.
Oh, when they've left?
Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah, there's this belief or this experience that spirits communicate through electricity. And I have to say, I've experienced that. You could blame it on the circuit or the whatever, but there's also that body gnosis, right? When you have these experiences. Jay's mom, my husband's mom, Paula, was one of my soulmates. She died in 2019. And she used to talk about white feathers coming to her from her ancestors. And I sort of was like, back then I was like, okay, maybe. And sure enough, I'd be walking in the streets of Miami and a white feather would be sticking out of the cement, and Paula would pick that up and feel her ancestor's presence. And she said, when I leave, I'll be sending white feathers. And I to this day, receive white feathers at these powerful moments where there's no bird in the sky. And under the oak tree at the sanctuary, this white feather landed on my black shirt. So those sorts of things, I think, happen. And I think being open to it. There's a Netflix documentary series called Surviving Death, and one of their episodes is on signs. So signs can come through cardinals or you name it, But there is a felt sense of people immediately after they die. And some people say it takes the soul some time to finally detach. The 3 days in some traditions, 40 days in others. So I have felt that people's energies linger and felt connected to them.
When my father passed away, we had his funeral. I think it was like 3 days later, something like that. And after the funeral, we went back to the house. It was me and my wife and son, my mom, and his 2 best friends. So basically, other than my sister, like the people closest to him in the whole world. And we were back at the house talking about how beautiful the funeral was and just kind of like debriefing after the funeral. And the phone rang, and my mom has a landline. And it was one of those phones that says the name of the caller. So the phone rings and it says, "Call from Frindel Neil." My dad. "Call from Frindel Neil." His cell phone is in the house, turned off. And the phone rings. We all I answered it and it was just silent. For me, you talk about that moment where you know that death is, that was the moment, I think for every one of us in the room, that boundary between life and death was just I felt like I could fly afterwards. It was one of the most incredible gifts I feel like he could have given us afterwards. I'm still here, this thing goes on. It was amazing. It was one of the most profoundly moving experiences of my life, probably.
So beautiful.
And I've heard people share those stories, but when it happens, it's a different kind of thing.
Yes.
And I just imagine being in the world where it's are those things happening all the time and people don't know about it or talk about it that much?
We don't talk about it much because we're afraid of being woo or out there, you know. It reminds me when my father died, first of all, he was picking flowers off this rock ledge at his house, and it was a hydrangea he was picking on this top, probably the prettiest one in the bunch. And he fell and he hit his head on the rock, and that's how he had a brain injury. But he was picking hydrangeas for his loved ones. And I remember thinking, why hydrangeas? You know, they're just this big thing, you know, and big, beautiful flower maybe, but I didn't have a connection to hydrangeas. And I had never looked at a petal of a hydrangea flower, which is exquisite, because I've always just seen this clump, you know, unlike a rose, which is distinct. So I didn't really understand why he loved hydrangeas so much. So after he died, I was walking into our living room, and we have a circular table, and I saw this puddle of water and a cup that had clearly overturned. And so I came up to the puddle to clean it up, and it was in the shape of a heart. And there was one hydrangea petal sitting at the top of the heart. And I thought, and I had never seen a hydrangea petal isolated. It was exquisite. And I called the children, and I said, "Hey, Sahana, Avitashi, can you come in? Did you all make this?" And nobody had a clue why there was a heart with a flower petal. And I felt the same thing. I took a picture of it, and it was just this knowing, "Oh, Papa, you're okay. I get it now, why you love hydrangeas." But it still brings me peace and comfort.
Yeah, to just know that this is just like a string, and it's like a bead in a necklace, and who knows, it's all so mysterious, but there can be this sense that it's all very finite. And when you feel that freedom into infinity, it's so liberating.
And you know, this kind of segues into what I'm just now deepening into exploration of and understanding of, is what these conversations, what our relationship to death can teach us about life in a deep way, and how it can influence systems and societies and our culture at large, and actually potentially heal, you know, so much of what we're struggling with on this planet as humans, because of what you're speaking to, this awareness that we are part of the vastness of space and time, right? We're part of the whole, and there's no separation between you and me. You know, we are one, like what all the wisdom traditions speak of, but we get to really feel into that reality. And how does that shift all of society? Individually, collectively, you know. I'm so curious about it all.
Yeah, when David, you know, our mutual friend David, when he passed over a year and a half ago, right? I remember driving over to your sanctuary, and I could feel him. I don't know, it wasn't very verbal, but I could feel his kind of energy lingering, you know, like that. And I talked out loud in my car, and I was like, "Look, bro," I was like, "just, you know, you had to move on to a different dimension, because he knew that in his last, you know, month or month and a half, he knew that he was being called. He used to say Baba, like his guru. He was like, Baba's calling me, so I'm gonna go, you know." And so I think he definitely had that, but I really felt like his energy was lingering a little bit. And so I said, you know, I was like, "Dave, just move on." I was like, you know, you have to be somewhere else. I was like, "Don't linger here too long," you know. I just said it like out loud. And then we came to your place, and then I asked Mira, I said, would it be okay if I want to boom the shit out of these Sanskrit slokas? It'll probably take me about 10 minutes. Is that okay? Because I feel like I didn't actually go into that part with her at that juncture, And I just sat in one of your rooms where David was, and Mira sat with me, actually. She sat with me in the same room. I was like, I'm just gonna do this. And she was like, I want to sit with you. And I was like, okay, fine. I was like, I'm really gonna let this thing rip, okay? I'm always gonna be loud, okay? And she was, no, I wanna be there with you. I was like, okay, let's do it. And so we both sat there. And I just felt this like calm, like after I just let it rip so loud in my most deepest voice. And afterwards, I just felt this like deep sense of peace. So even though he was technically gone, I felt that as like a friend, as like a brother, it seemed like there was something that still needed to be, shifted. But it was very sweet. It's probably one of my sweetest memories. And was at your sanctuary?
Oh, not mine, but yes, the sanctuary.
The sanctuary.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. It's beautiful. Yeah, so much of what we speak of when we're talking about presence with death and even after death, it's energetic and vibrational and mysterious. And I think chanting is a really beautiful way to kind of help whatever energy is lingering, or even the fear that's present, to help move that energy, transmute it, transform it. I don't know how it works, but it's a powerful, powerful medicine.
And you chant, first of all, you're chanting, you've got this incredibly beautiful voice, and your devotional practice is very powerful. How much does that weave into the space you hold with people?
Yeah, I would chant all the time if I could, but I wait for the invitation. And definitely I incorporate it into my offering at the bedside when it's invited, or when I sense it's needed or wanted by family or others. My teacher in India, Krishna Kant Shukla, he lives in Varanasi. He says, in the scriptures, it says if you're chanting to the name of God, either personally or surrounded by that chant, it's the greatest, as you're leaving this body, it's the greatest karmic blessing. And so, the times I've done that, I really have felt the power, really powerful, to chant while somebody's actually leaving, which is rare. I haven't had the opportunity often, but several times.
I say in spiritual humor, name your kids like names of God. So possibly on your deathbed, where you're God,
or just you're yelling at them all the time.
like Krishna.
Yeah. My friend I was talking with some friends the other day about, somebody was asking us how we've talked to my son about Jesus, because there's a bunch of us that are really into those stories right now. And they said, because I asked my son the other day, like, do you know who Jesus is? And he said, you mean Jesus Christ? He'd only heard his name.
You're like different Jesus.
But we were talking last night about, we're kind of in the thread of two different stories of my family right now. One that we're watching, Wing Feather, which is amazing. And then this other book that I've been reading, Dylan, called The Silver Trumpet. And in both stories, in one, it's the silver trumpet is used to speak between realms. The sound of the trumpet brings people between realms. And in the other show, Wing Feather, it's this like flute harp instrument that can speak between dragons and different realms. And we were reading them, we were like in the thread of both of them, and just noticed like it's music, because it feels like that in life so much too. We were talking about in ayahuasca ceremony, the icaros, the songs are what's kind of moving that spirit between the body and the mysterious realms. But so often it's music that can plug us into the unseen world. It's
beautiful.
Quite a magical thing, music.
Oh my goodness, yes. I'm so grateful for it as a way to connect to the ancestral realm and beyond, not only to this moment, but also I feel my father and I played music together from when I was 4, all the way till he crossed last year. And to this day, as I sing his songs or hear his voice and sing with his CDs, I feel so deeply connected. And it's such a blessing.
Is that what he did? Was he
He says he would have been a musician if he had had his way, but his father encouraged him to go into medicine, and so he ended up becoming a Parkinson's disease specialist, actually. but loved music all along.
And recorded CDs.
One CD
Okay.
that we did. I'm so grateful for. Yeah. So in Africa, they have the mbira, which is a thumb piano, and was played at funerals and was a way to connect with the ancestral realm. So I think traditions all over the world have used music for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you did a documentary short film, or with a music therapist, is that
Did
right?
I ever share it with you? I can't remember.
I haven't seen it, no, but you mentioned it.
It was amazing. So this was a friend of mine that I grew up with. We went to high school and middle school together. And he studied music therapy in school. You know, we used to play in bands in high school. We were just, you know, a bunch of knuckleheads. But he decided to like take the knuckleheadness seriously. And he started out, he's got this big red beard, and we both moved to New York City, and he was working at St. Vincent's Hospital before it closed in New York City. And I would get together, and he would tell me how he would just have this cart full of instruments, and he would roam around the hospital in like a end of life kind of situation and ask people like, hey, you want to jam? And he would bring instruments into the room, and most people would tell him to get out of there, but some people would invite him in, and he would just sit and play music with people. And that evolved into him coming up with this idea to record the heartbeat of people when they were nearing, not in the dying process, but as they were, you know, preparing for that, and either create a piece of music with them or with their families, or use the heartbeat for their families to have as like a grieving tool to make a project with later. So I made a film with him where I spent a lot of time. He had moved back to Louisville, where we were from, and I would go back and spend like a week, 2 weeks at a time with him and patients. We profiled a few patients in the process and spent a lot of time in the cancer center of this hospital in Louisville. And it was an incredibly powerful experience to get to know people in the process and to watch what him bringing creativity and music and joy into these situations where people are stuck. And, you know, the hospital is, in my mind, about the worst place you can find yourself, like next to prison. Like there's not many more unpleasant situations. You can't sleep. It's like
beeping.
And he would completely transform those rooms. It was like a little party would develop in the hospital, and then the nurses would want to come around more, and we'd be playing music. It was an incredible experience. And then my father ended up dying we got him out of the hospital before he actually died, but his last weeks were spent in the hospital that I had been filming Brian a few years earlier. And my dad was under Brian's like care. It was a pretty incredible twist of fate, the way that came out. But yeah, there's a film on Ayurveda Plus called The Beat of the Heart.
The Beat of the Heart.
Yeah, there wasn't.
Beautiful. It's very touching.
Yeah, I've been very drawn to being in this end of life space because I feel like there's so much richness. It's like the birth and the death, the windows open, and you can touch into something much bigger than we are living with most people most of the time. And it's an incredible honor and just opportunity to be in those spaces with people. If you're somebody who is drawn to God, like if that's something that you are focused on in your life, that end of life space is so rich to be able to access that and just get that, the thin veil between worlds. It's very palpable.
Yeah, you know, the death doula movement, are you familiar with what it's grown in the last 10 plus years? And I think as more and more people die and we're with people we love, we access that portal, if you will. We touch into that kind of unity consciousness, that oneness space. And I think that's partly what's drawing people to want to be in those spaces more. And what we're finding at the sanctuary is that people showing up in service, like they're actually getting to look at their own fears and attachments and ideas of how things should go, and practicing letting go of all that to show up fully with a person. So it's almost like a practice ground or a place to integrate all our mystical experiences and all our direct experiences with God to actually bring it to the physical. And how does that service look, day to day, when we're vulnerable with one another, when we're in these heightened states with one another, where there's also a lot of emotion and grief and sadness and pain, but we get to move with that in community, which is it's been really powerful to witness.
So you work there full time now, or?
So I'm the executive director, founder, and so I do that, and then I'm part-time doctoring still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and finding my way with it all. If you know the nonprofit sector, you understand.
Yeah.
But it's incredible to see how many people have shown up to support what we're doing. So it doesn't feel like it rests on my shoulders. It's very much a collective and a collaborative space, guided by this vision that's coming through, but it's been really inspiring to witness people's level of presence and willingness to show up in the unknown together. Yeah.
It's such a need. Like every city should have an Aditi or somebody that's like trying to create a space for people. Like I know there's other similar, people are trying similar things, but I can't imagine how difficult it is to actually actualize it.
It's been a journey. We're part of a network called the Omega Home Network. So there are homes in every state, almost every state, not quite. I think there's 40 in operation, but they're opening every so often. And it's a network of homes similar to ours. It's a nonprofit, community-supported end-of-life care spaces. So I'm grateful for that network. But it's a pretty new model still.
Is it B.J. Miller? Was that his name? Are you familiar?
B.J. Miller, yeah. He was part
In
of the
San
Zen
Francisco,
Hospice Project.
Right? Mm-hmm. Is that still a thing?
That closed.
Okay.
But I think there's other initiatives developing. We're trying to stay outside of the Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement structure and be really community run. And so that is its own unique, it brings its own unique challenges, but being removed from some of that regulatory stuff, it's a kind way of saying it, gives us more freedom and space for creativity. So it's been good.
It seems when you get into that moment in life, the primary relationship I feel like that each of us has is with the divine inside of us, is between whatever like the I is and the divinity in us. But most of our life we're dealing with all these other relationships that the volume is much louder on for most people. But when you get into that end of life space, I feel like that's the relationship that a lot of people are facing maybe for the first time, is like that sense of their own divinity, and to provide a supportive space where everybody's speaking that language and that relationship is, the light is kind of shine and supportive. I'm just kind of curious, like everybody that comes to you, I'm guessing, is already sort of on the wave of that relationship, I would think, where that's up.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a self-selection to the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. You know, just the fact that they're comfortable coming to a place where they know they're going to leave. They're not, you know, there's very few places where you have that awareness so full on, you know, you're not shying away from this reality that I'm about to die. So there's a self-selection. People have to be somewhat comfortable, but not all. You'd be surprised. Some people need, you know, there's this idea that when I'm dying, the systems that exist will be able to tend to me, right? So hospice, some people are surprised when they're tending to their loved one and hospice comes into the home but only provides a nurse once a week and a CNA twice a week. They're like, but I thought you provide 24/7 care. So there are people that just need that level of community support because either they don't have family members that can care for them or they don't have means to hire additional support. So we've had some of those individuals come to us that just need that level of care, not necessarily ready to die, but dying and need more support. And so, yeah, it varies who we end up tending to and supporting. Yeah.
What are some other wishes or prayers that you have for this community? You're doing so much. So like, how do you see your life unfolding over the next, 5-10 years? Or
I love that. Appreciate that question. You know, I've been someone who just sort of responds to the next step and not really thinking about or tuning into much beyond the moment and what's called for and then immediate next step. But part of the vision that's come through, to speak to your comment that every community could have one of these.
Needs an Aditi or working
not
on
me,
a
not
cloning
me.
problem,
No,
cloning
not
project.
me. But this idea that if we're really going to impact our cultural relationship to death and how we approach death and dying, which I believe could change how we relate to one another, I've said that before, then how can we empower communities to tend to their own people, their own loved ones, right? Because I'm going all over the place, but this idea, I was walking in England after my dad died, I went to England with my mom to see her brother, and I was walking down the streets and I was looking at these churches that were pretty empty, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, there's these built-in church communities. What if you have 20 doulas or 10 doulas in a church community and they start to tend to their community members and support their community members and start to be around death and have these conversations and engage with death and invite that intimacy into their relationships. Like that is one way. If we start to empower communities to take care of one another, we can impact the culture at large. So that's one thing, that people will start to feel empowered to care for one another. Mm-hmm. And then this other idea that any community that wants a center for conscious living and dying, a hub, a place to gather, a place to serve, a place to love, a place to walk their loved ones home, our loved ones home, can have one and can be inspired to create one. So those two things, I would say.
And like a sharing of learnings. I imagine the amount of learnings and just logistics and bureaucracy of how to navigate a lot of that. I'm sure you've had.
Sharing all that, right? I think the collaborative spirit is really alive in what we're doing, and I think that's what I see moving forward is continued collaboration and amplification of everyone's good work. So we're not all, the old paradigm of the I and, doing this alone, I think is wanting to die. Along with
I think that village word goes a long way. Like if we realize our connection and that we can't live without each other. I think, if you have somebody who has cows and they provide dairy, and then somebody who's growing something else, and I think that Asheville is kind of like, in one way, is a really cutting edge place because you kind of have people that are very aware of this interdependency. I think the more that all of us can live into that as much as humanly possible, will heal, many, many people. We had a friend of ours do your death doula course just, a couple months ago.
Yeah. Adam Bauer.
Oh, Adam.
Yeah.
Love Adam.
Yeah, and he was really moved by it and it was very sweet.
Yeah, and Adam, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, but he ended up being the death doula for a dear friend shortly after that and was equipped. And it was so beautiful to be just alongside him in my small way, to see that ripple effect of caring, of this, learning the skills necessary to show up so that you feel prepared, but knowing that we inherently know how to do this. I think that's the shift. You don't have to be a death doula, but it's helpful to learn some of the skills. That's beautiful.
I know he was excited about being able to chant with people in that process too.
Yes.
Again, just like these mantras and songs, and it plugs you into something kind of ancient in that process.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you had said something, Mitesh, you were saying about interconnectedness, interdependence. Yes, I think that is another part of the vision, that we remember that and deeply remember that we are so interdependent and interconnected. And that's fundamental to being human, I think, that we've somehow forgotten.
Yeah, and I think that however we can be connected to you, or however the paths may, join, I think, we're very open to that. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm here now, Asheville forever,
Yay.
Because I realized there's only
He's got an Asheville beard now.
Yeah. I don't know how it's gonna last. This thing itches. I don't know how you do it, because mine is itching all the time. I think maybe it'll last another week or so. I'm not gonna be a beard guy, but I'm an Asheville guy. And we've just found such a great community. There's one place in the world where there's enough weird, crazy people that are, just like us. Because, before, if I'd grab a cup of coffee anywhere in the country, I've lived a bunch of different places, I'd really just be to myself. I wouldn't pay any attention But here, first of all, the people are so snoopy, okay? So they're like eavesdropping on your conversation. They don't mind just sitting, they'll just come and plop down at your table. And I just love it. It was like, I was like these randos, and then generally they're worth like talking to, and it's just been a great network. Mostly, it's been a great
Mostly.
Mostly.
I like
95%. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Did you grow up here?
I grew up in Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, and moved here in 2008 to do my medical training and stayed. I love it too. It's home. I think the land, is very powerful here. And I think we're all being called forth to something. I don't know if I can understand that more than just that feeling and sense that we're being guided and supported.
Yeah, after we moved here, we went through a lot. I mean, with Helene hit, I'm sure everybody went through a lot. Like, we lost like 1 and 2 trees at like our center. It was like these tornadoes dropped down, and I was like, what the hell? Like, how are we gonna get through this? But I really feel there was a lot of cleansing, and I see a lot of beauty coming out of it. So we're new here, but I feel, even more so committed to being in Asheville. It's like just cool people, right?
That's
I mean,
awesome.
just like, yeah.
Well, you all are bringing so much to this community, and just this listening room, it's just been so powerful to be a part of the gatherings here, the events here. So
Yeah, you're almost part of the house band at this point.
So I've heard that. I'm honored.
There's a crew that I feel like should just leave their stuff here.
I think in 2026 we're probably going to make the listening room nonprofit also.
Wow.
Is what we're thinking. I think most of the projects we're working on at some point, we're thinking more like foundational and just like, multi-generational, like legacy type, even Soham at the end of the day. I think all of it's probably going to get rolled up into something that is just of service, and something that can help the next generation. So I think if we create organizational structures, businesses or institutions, for the lack of better words, and then like our children and their children, they don't have to go through the same thing that we went through. Like if there is some infrastructure to spread light, and that type of thing is a thought. There's a thought to see what happens. But specifically, the listening room, we're going to turn to a nonprofit next year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love just the idea of the multi-generational aspect to what we're all doing here.
Yeah.
Naming that acknowledges that we're mortal and that we're passing through.
Right.
And, this idea that we're healing things from 7 generations before and caring, tending to things for 7 generations to come. I love that awareness that you're bringing into service here.
Wait, did I say 7 generations?
You said I just brought up 7 generations. I think that's.
But I didn't say 7 generations.
You didn't.
Okay, just really quick then. See, this is why
I had the same question too.
Wait a second.
I've heard you talk about it.
I only talk about 7 generations, and there's a village thing. It's really interesting. So we both, Aradia, we're going to get on our podcast.
Do you know Aradia?
She's like, do you know Aradia?
Through Cora.
I've met
Aradia.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I haven't seen her personally, no.
So she's our super close friend. We love her. She loves us. It's great. I call her my spiritual therapist. I think she's your spiritual therapist too. I think that when you have spiritual experiences, you want to integrate them into how to bring. You might have an experience that you have a hard time putting words to, but how can you bring that experience into this life, this reality, and be of service? And at least for me, she's been very much like I hear the word integration. Like I really feel like she's helped me integrate so many different things. And she does this like, I don't think it's holotropic breathing, but that's the best I can describe it, as some type of holotropic breathing process. The one time I popped out of my body doing this like breathing thing, and I got this message, and we have so many little businesses here. So my wife is like, you cannot start another business. She's like, there's no way in hell you can't take on any more projects, like la 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 la. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, honey, I'm not gonna do that, right? And my friends, the people I work with, they're always like, you cannot start any new projects. So I've been warned. And then one time I was with Aradia, and I popped out of my body, and I saw like the youth, and I saw multiple generations down the road. And when I popped back into my body, I was talking to Aradia. She said, so what happened? I was like, I'm in big trouble. She was like, why? I was like, we have to do something for the youth. And, we have to, and we started a youth camp last year, with a small amount of kids, right? And one of the epiphanies that I got that really changed my life was, if you serve somebody 7 generations from now, like if my today's decision-making criteria is for 7 generations from now, everything becomes crystal clear, and it actually has. And it shifted how I think about so many things, because it's really interesting. 'Cause people 7 generations from now are not going to remember you. They're not going to know your name. You're not going to get any gratitude from them, nothing. So you kind of have enough of a distance, you know, and to love that generation and to love the earth that generation is going to walk on, it really, for me, started clarifying decisions I'm going to make today and tomorrow and the day after, you know? And so, and that's this multi-generational leadership. I also think, okay, so whole new topic. So this concept of village.
Thank you for sharing that, though. I love that. That came to you.
So this concept of village, you know, is, I think that how do we connect 15-year-olds to 25-year-olds to 35-year-olds to 45-year-olds to 55-year-olds? Because in a village, it would naturally happen. So the sharing of wisdom happens like really easily, you know? And not in a village setting, but in our settings, we're all isolated. We usually hang out with people either our age or teenagers, hang out with teenagers. But that conversation, what we've realized, you know, starting to work with the youth is that there's so much that we can learn from them. And then we need to give them a voice on really big issues of like in the community. And if everyone kind of has a voice and we can learn from each other, like multi-generationally, I think that leadership structure is much better than just like a governor or a mayor or, you know, like that type of situation. So, and then in the villages, it would happen very naturally. Like they would all just sit on a corner. You'd have like maybe all the men there, or like in Indian villages, I know it's very popular. The women would be putting oil in the girls' hairs, or like there's all this like multi-generational communication that was happening anyway. So this whole concept about 7 generations, I think it's just so layered. You know, how do we work in service of the 7th generation from now, 1? 2, how do we create multi-generational leadership and wisdom structures that can really help us, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. We have a little bit of that experience, as I mentioned earlier, at the center. And when the Warren Wilson students, college students, are on campus, they've seen the children running around and the elders in service, and they've commented, wow, this is so life-giving, it's so nourishing. And some of them become bedside volunteers where they're directly interacting with elders. And so that is just one node where this experiment or this practice can be realized, you know. Another part of the sanctuary's magic, I would say, is that elderhood is honored, or at least elders are invited to participate and bring their gifts. So the first formal volunteer on paper was a beloved woman named Mary, and she had made signs. All the signs in Black Mountain were made by her, many of them, of all the businesses, and she had her printing equipment still, and she offered to make the signs. So when you come to the sanctuary, you'll see she made all the beautiful signs on the property. And so elders are invited to bring their gifts and valued, you know, and that I think has been valuable for them, to be seen and to feel alive and vibrant and to be of service in these deep ways. So yeah, and the word, you know, backing up to what you said about integration, I had this thought as the psychedelic revolution has been unfolding, just that people are having these mystical, powerful, interconnected, you know, experiences, and then they return to their siloed life. And where are the spaces for integration and daily practice of these realizations? And what I have seen is that the sanctuary, or the service around death and those who are dying, has really been a place where we get to have like reactions to people. We get to be triggered and activated, and we get to look at ourselves and our beliefs and our, you know, our need to control, and actually move through that and move with it and grow and evolve together, which has been really challenging at times and also really powerful. Yeah.
I feel like that's part of, for us, why we started a lot of the things that we do, but I'll speak to the streaming platform in particular, is people have, you know, these kind of heightened experiences, and then you go back, and how do you stay plugged into that stream of inspiration, you know, like learning, growing, evolving, and loop it in, weave it into your day-to-day. And it feels like storytelling is such a huge part of that process. So for us, it's kind of like giving an environment where people aren't, there's, you know, places to check out, and like there's a purpose for all kinds of things, but to really create a community of inspiring stories and practices to keep people in that thread of, like, you have these awakenings, but how do you integrate them and make it sink in deeper and expand your bandwidth for that.
It's beautiful.
So,
Thank
trying
you.
to figure that out.
It's a beautiful, yeah. You're pioneers too.
We all are. It's the Asheville water.
Asheville water.
I think, you know, the camp we ran last year, it was just a very small group of kids, very special crew, and they're age 14 to 17. So we're going to do it again this summer, but we decided to have 15. So we're slowly growing. But you know, I'd love for you to maybe think through, you know, what they're usually is a 2-week camp, and generally, I wonder if there's something that, you know, we could do like with your community that could give them some insight into that. That might be kind of cool.
Yeah. We've had some schools bring students. I think even Sola came.
Oh yeah.
To work on the land and just connect with the space and understand the mission, vision. So yeah, there's definitely ways we can get creative.
Awesome.
Yeah. Our new vision statement is that, you know, we imagine a world, it's kind of this grand vision, that where everyone awakens to the power of love and service. And so the service component can show up in different ways, you know, with children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why Hanuman came to hang out with us.
Yes, love.
For some service
Devotion.
energy.
That's right. That's beautiful.
Well, Aditi, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming by. We appreciate your time.
Such an honor.
Our prayers are that you may be successful and prosper, and you know, may you have wind in your sails for all the good work you do.
Thank you, Mitesh. Appreciate you, Jeremy.
Yeah, look forward to continuing to flow and grow together here.
Beautiful. Thank you.